Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the only actually signature. Well, then I can come and collect the signature. So, yeah, I mean,
The only.
So there's a risk. Yeah, you got.
I think there's work.
Where is it?
Thank you.
If you want to fill it out right now, I'll notarize it.
I will. I will.
I know I'm. Collecting signatures. So. None, whatsoever, very, very low. risk. I'm out of much.
Morning, Sheila.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. Stand in line for the delivery.
Absolutely. Everyone should.
Oh, who knows how you get those? Yeah. Very ambitious. Very motivated. I'm responsive to the motivation. There, I got out right away.
I'm on my way. Look at that. Look at you. You already, half the job's already done. Half the job. Well, then I have to do all the walking. Right. Now it's just long division from now on. How many houses can I get to? You defeat Trump. That'll be the only math I'll have to worry about. Actually, you know what? If we're gonna poll this past Tuesday, I feel a lot more comfortable with what's gonna happen in November. Our voters are motivated. Our voters are very motivated. So, and I had a lot of them. I had one of them go. And now I'm a trusted Republican. Thanks for saying that.
If you want to be a Precinct Delegate and you need a notary, Tom's your guy.
We have the forms here too.
What?
We also have the forms here. They can fill out the form and I'll notarize it. They'll be all set.
So it's all stop back there. Please, if you need to sign, please go back. All right, so for those who have a faces, what we will get, we get come see that. I am Michael Beck, I am the chair. We have our vice chair, Carl on the back, Carl will leave your hand. We have our wonderful secretary, Mike, and our treasurer, Deb, is out today. But we welcome everybody. We're doing a quick icebreaker, and the questions are not all just Dem an icebreaker. What I want you to do, around your neighbor, introduce yourself, say your name. And then the question today, 3 minutes. What is your favorite Girl Scout cookie? And what Girl Scout cookie would you bring back from retirement if you could? So 3 minutes, introduce yourself, and answer that question.
Oh my goodness.
Wow, my name is Jeremy.
I have actually 8 boxes of that cookies in my head. Good job, because one of Brian's reps, they send me swag all the time, it's all PS. Someone sent me 8 boxes. I am putting college. I can't get any Girl Scout cookies. Yeah, they all have it. They all have it. There's no one on it. What about you? I like the mint one. And I don't know about any retired Girl Scout cookies. I have no idea what that means. I don't even know what that means. I'll tell you what though, I would definitely do, if I believe Girl Scout cookies, that's the main one. I love the mint cookies. I remember those things really good. So if I would bring them back into my diet, it would be the lemon one. Some sort of lemon infection. Yeah. Yeah. Oh well. Oh well, but those thin mints, I remember just popping them like candy. Like one in your mouth every time. Just boom, boom, boom. There's a whole sleeve of them. I bought 2 boxes, 3 boxes actually. Left them at work. My wife was like, she'll bring them home. Yeah, don't bring them home because they're gonna get eaten. So I eat a few and then I stick out the rest in the office. That's kind of what I do. That way I can have some, but not the whole thing.
In my.
Yeah, lots of, oh, Deb's in. Why is Deb not here? But she's joining us in the meeting, you know?
Brown butter and bourbon chocolate stone.
So she clicks in, there we go.
Fine. So that's my go-to.
Hi, Deb. We see you.
No, no. And
You missed our question. It is,
well, don't you stop at the butter.
what's your favorite Girl Scout cookie? And if you were to bring one back that was retired, what would it be?
I'll just brown the butter like I did before, and then just let it national temperature enough. And the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of bourbon, but for me, it's mostly.
Hold on.
The point is good, but we're better.
I mean, I don't, I've never been. But I want to.
Icebreaker with you, they're coming over for dinner.
And if you don't, if you're up there.
Is that
you need
today?
this- Yeah, that's just for today. Are you collecting all the precinct delegates? Or somebody? To turn them all in, somebody shouldn't turn them
All
all.
right. So we are.
I was just gonna turn them in myself. We can,
We are
I
joined
don't
by
know
our
what the
guest
deal is.
expert,
William
Todd
probably
from
can try this.
Great Lakes Water Authority.
Right? No, I'm just thinking, rather than people, everybody. Even though they're gonna people collect them all before they leave, and just have one person drop them all off. At the. Let's have William do it. William.
My name's Todd. I'm the Great Lakes Water Authority. But my job is system resilience. So what I'm looking at is basically the three pillars. So there's people.
Guys.
What I'm going to talk about today is about between the wastewater side and the stormwater side of the operation of the assets. So for those of you that aren't totally familiar with us, we are a nonprofit municipal authority that was born out of the city of Detroit bankruptcy. So as we came out of the bankruptcy, we took the wholesale operations for water and wastewater and created a wholesale entity that ended up being called Clewa. And then we are responsible for providing you with drinking water, 3.8 million people in collecting and treating wastewater, so about 2.8 million people. So that's kind of the mission for Clewa. And today I wanted to talk about, basically I have 3 different learning objectives for today. So the first thing is climate change is real. I'm not going to try and prove that. I'm not going to try and debate that. I'm just going to state that as a fact. That, climate change has been happening since the ice ages. It's happening now. It's going to continue to happen in the future. You can argue and debate about the trends and which way it's going, but please.
Democrats, I think we agree.
Exactly. And so maybe what I'm going to talk about is the legal system and where it is relative to the rest of the drainage areas and the overall area that we serve. And then finally, I hope to convince you that we need to work together across the boundaries to address these challenges that we're trying to see in the face of the increase, drainage and flooding and infrastructure. And how do we come together and solve the problems without these issues? Let's go. I've got about 15 minutes to a half hour here. You feel free to interrupt and, we'll talk. And anything I say that doesn't make sense, just stop. So the overall wastewater side of the house, serves about, like I said, about 2.8 million people, about 950 square miles of service area. We've got one big wastewater recovery, resource recovery facility, and that can serve about, that can treat about 933 million gallons per day by what we call secondary treatment, and then during rainwater, wet water events, it can go to 1.7 billion gallons per day. It's one of the largest facilities of its kind in the country. We have 18 member partners across 79 communities. We've got three big, what we call interceptors. These are the three big veins, if you will, that bring water down to the wastewater treatment plant. We've got 9, what we call CFO facilities. These partial treatments, and they're up in the system so that when it rains, during wet weather events, they come online and give partial treatment, usually settling, disinfection. And then there's probably another 100 outfalls that just discharge untreated combined sewage. So, and there's 9 big pump stations that when they don't work right, you hear about it in the news. The governing board for Viva consists of 2 appointees from the city of Detroit, one from Oakland, one from Macomb, and one from Wayne, and then governor appoints a director as well. So those are the kind of the board of directors who the CEO reports to and she's got to manage. So the first thing I wanted to kind of drop back and just talk about a little bit about how the sewer system functions, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So this, I'm stealing this slide from my good friend Sam Smalley, he's the deputy director and chief operating officer at DWSB. We recently co-presented on a EPA webinar, and I'm stealing some of his slides for that. But you know, sewage collection starts at the house, it goes out into the street. And the local municipalities bring that water into our interceptors, and then we deal with it from there. So there's basically the house is going into the sanitary goes into the what we're calling a combined sewer line here. And the reason it's called combined sewer, there's 3 terms you'll hear me say. There's sanitary, there's storm, and there's combined sewer. What combined sewer means is the sanitary and the storm lines come together. And what does that mean? That means when it rains, there's the potential for, if the system's not draining fast enough or not being pumped away fast enough, then there can be basement backups. Talk a little bit how we got there. And so there is the overall 953 square miles of service area. So you can see it extends into all 3 Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb counties pretty extensively, the entire city of Detroit. These are some of the pipes in there. I'll get into more details on this, but there's 3 main interceptors. So there's the Detroit River Interceptor, there's the North Interceptor East Arm. This green part is what's managed by what's called Oakland Macomb Intermediate Drainage District. So they managed up to that point. And then over here is the Northwest Interceptor. And those are the 3 main tunnels or big pipes that come down to the wastewater treatment facility or the water resources recovery facility, which is right there by Doug. So within the system, there are various treatment options, I guess I'll say. So within the city of Detroit, which is where the Viva system is confined to, based on how we were born out of the city of Detroit system, we have what we call we have pump stations, we have retention treating basins. We don't have any equalization basins; those are the backbots in the pipe where water is stored and then discharged at a lower rate. And then shafts, there's one of those, or 2 of those in Deer One that were another form of an equalization basin. So when there's And then these color coding are all the different entities that we serve. So the white spot there, that's the city of Warren. So city of Warren has its own wastewater treatment plant. City of Pontiac has its own wastewater treatment plant. So those are. So I'm going to go quickly through kind of the history of getting back to the question of why is it, you know, one of the questions often comes up is, well, why do we have combined sewer retention? Right? Why don't we just have the dirty water going through the sanitary, the storm water going through the storm? Well, the answer is our system dates back 1840. So pre-Civil War. So when they started building this system out, you know, they were really just looking at getting, for lack of a better word, getting waste off the streets, right? We're just trying to get the water off the streets so that people aren't walking around in it and mucking it around. So the system builds out within the city of Detroit. And right around 1900, they start building the waterworks part, the first water treatment plant, which is right about here. And you can see all the sewage is down, being directed down here. And then we have the intake just off Belle Isle. And then that's to get out of the dark days of typhoid and cholera and all that stuff. So, but when they originally built this, nobody was thinking of stormwater. They were just trying to get the sanitary out of the system. So everything is, you know, they built a wastewater collection system. They tacked on some catch basins to bring, you know, and it just kind of built up from that. So in the modern day, we can't do that anymore. You have to have separate storm. You have to have separate system. And then that just kind of builds out the rest of the city. So getting back to this map where the cross-hatched area is, this is all combined sewer. Where there's no cross-hatching, that's separate. So there's both storm and sanitary. Now, even a dedicated system of sanitary during wet weather events, there's rainfall that gets into the system. That's called infiltration and inflow. You try to manage that and you try to keep that rainwater out, but it still happens.
Yep. I don't see Royal Oak on there on your key on the right. Who manages Royal Oak system?
You guys are right around in here. Yeah. So that's Oakland County Water Resources. District. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to. Am I going on time? Here's where it gets complicated, right? So when you're talking about rainfall, you've got intensity, you've got duration, and you've got frequency. Those are the technical engineering terms that we use to think about what are we designing for when we put together a drainage plan and a storm system. So most of the city of Detroit system and most of these combined areas were built using a 10-year 1-hour storm. So that equates to about 1.7 inches of rainfall. And the areas outside, those are built to a 25-year, 24-hour storm, and that's about 3.9 and 8 inches. So that sounds like a big difference, right? But the volumes that we're talking about here are really the quantity of intensity times duration. So it's inches per hour is your intensity, and duration is how long, you know, the period is that we're talking about. So it's not so much the quantities that are the issue, it's how intense that is. And so when you hear the weather report and how much rain we had, and you hear these things about design storms, that's where it all gets muddled when people start talking past each other, because it's complicated. So the key thing I wanted to point out here is that you start thinking about this 50-year, 100-year, 1,000-year storms. You know, we get up to like 7.38 inches per 1,000-year storm. Sounds like a lot, but the keeper of all this information is the NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And they maintain a thing called the Atlas 14. And I just went to that and looked up my mom's house in Thomas Stewart, Florida. And their 10-year, 24-hour storm is, 7.58 inches. So we can engineer our way out of this thing, but most of Florida was built in the last 50 years, right? I mean, and we've got over 150 years of history that we have to deal with. So that's the conundrum we're in, and I just wanted to take that point, or make that point forward here. Any questions on that? That was a master's level course in about.
Maybe a little off. What's the biggest maintenance issue?
So the biggest maintenance issue, there's a few of them, and we're looking at power reliability is one of the key issues, and that was one of the causal factors of the 2021 flood there. We've got old stuff, right? I mean, these pump stations there's 2 pump stations that are called Crude and Connor that are up in this area. And each one of those stations is rated at about 2 billion gallons per day, which is the same capacity as the whole water resources recovery facility. So a lot rides on those guys operating as promised. And the Connor station was the biggest in the state when it was built in 1930. It's been modified and added onto a few times, but some of that stuff still dates to 1930. So we're looking at upgrading the Crude pump station, the Connor pump station, but those are $100 million, multi-$100 million efforts. So it's a lot of money. And it's not going to do anything other than keep us at the same level of service. It's not going to improve our response in the face of climate change or this trend of increasing duration keeps going.
So what do you plan to do in order to correct the problem so that we don't have the flooding? I mean, the flooding was intense. My home flooded 4 times. We lost everything and weren't compensated. Okay. And it's because of the Connor Creek Station. They said that they had to shut it down and not allow the water to actually flow out to the river, but kept it in.
Stick a pin in that. Let me come to that at the end of this.
All right.
Because I want to, it's a good point. It's a fair question. It takes money. So again, there's real 2 modes here. There's the dry weather mode, which normally you guys, it's pretty uneventful for the public. We do have problems during dry weather mode, but normally we get those without any problems. Resolve those without any issues with respect to the basement backups or things like that. Occasionally we go broke, but not many here. On the wet weather side of things, I guess there's a couple concepts I want to throw out there. Is up until this point in time, the big focus of the regulators since the Clean Water Act in the 1970s now has been improving water quality, right? So that's always first and foremost when you look at our regulations, our permits. State of Michigan and EPA, Eagle and EPA are trying to improve water quality. The receiving water bodies, so for us it's the Detroit River, Rouge River, Clinton River. Those are what the focus has been up until now. After 2014, 2021, the focus is starting to now shift. And it's now a balance between water quality and flood resiliency. So we have to look at both of these, especially, with the impacts of climate change and the trends we're starting to see there. So now it's a balancing act, and it took a little moment for everybody to reset and start thinking along those terms, but we're now in the process of heading down that path. So most of what we've done to date, and these are called in-system storage devices. So for smaller storms, we inflate dams and we do things with or gates and stuff to hold water back in the system. Let the storm pass and then we lead that back into the system. And it's kind of the same concept with these retention basins or the equalization basins. We hold water in the system, storm passes, then we leave it back. when we get to the screening and disinfection facilities, those are mainly kind of, we're gonna do some basic treatment. We're going to screen the floatables out. We're gonna try and disinfect, but then it's gonna go partially treated into the receiving water. So they're doing this.
Sorry, the storm retention, things that you're referring to. I used to work in Dearborn and I know they had to go through and I think they had to by law, build these huge, holes in the ground to retain the stormwater.
Yep.
I think at the city of Dearborn's cost.
Yep.
And they had a couple failed ones that didn't work out and I don't know how many they ended up with.
Yeah.
But they're enormous. Did any other communities have to build the same thing?
There were different versions of that. So that was like an innovative concept that they went all in on and it didn't work out very well. The prior, the route, there's a thing called the Rouge River Wetwater Demonstration Project that resulted in many of these retention basins. Same kind of concept where you're holding the water, trying to do some partial treatment before discharge. But yeah, there's a lot of, within the city of Detroit, within the outlying communities, there's a lot of retention basins, depending on where, depending on where their actual service boundaries are. They serve different areas, and like I say, the primary goal of the regulatory authorities were water quality, so they were trying to capture as much of that water as they can, treat what we couldn't capture economically, and then the overall goal is to try and get to zero discharge. Zero pollutant discharge. The NPDS is the permit that stands for National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. We really are trying to do this. Obviously, with big flooding events, that's problematic. So you need to have a safety valve or an outlet. So the big thing I wanted to communicate here was, this is a portion of the, we call this kind of the bathtub, the Believer system within the city of Detroit. So when the bathtub's full, at the very end here, when the bathtub's overflowing, these little green dots start flowing, and that is untreated sewage into the system, or into the Detroit River and the Rouge River. And the reason we do that is because we don't want to back up into people's basements. That's kind of the last resort. But we do a pretty good job. I think we're well above what EPA's goals were for the CSO combined sewer overflow control program. So we're in the 90s. I think the goal was somewhere in the 80% from capture. So that was kind of my overall point of, it's complicated, right? And so what we need and what I want to do where I'm at now is to start fostering this communication between the across the political boundaries, so that we can operate in a regional way where it makes sense to hold the water up, you know, in the various systems, and then bleed it back. It's the same concept that we're doing in the city, and it's also the same concept that they're doing with their respective service areas. But because of the way the weather patterns come across our region, there's often opportunities where, you know, one side of town gets hit heavier than another side of town. And so if we had an efficient way of communicating, and we had a regulatory framework that allows for it, there are opportunities to communicate and improve upon the overall, primarily the water quality aspects, retain more water in the system and get more water down to the grid for treatment. That's the highest and best treatment that we can get, is get it down there. That's kind of the objective. These are details I'll skip, but the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about was, we're working with the Army Corps of Engineers for the Southeast Michigan Flood Mitigation Study. And what this does is, for big projects that the Corps, only the Corps can really unlock the federal funds associated with these mega projects. And so we've gotten in President Biden's budget The start of the study to begin looking at our overall region and start addressing, in addition to the water quality issues, the flood resiliency issue. What are the things that we can do to keep water out of people's basements? What are the things that we can do to improve the overall nature of the system? A lot of, in the old days, there was a lot of paving over of natural river bodies and pipes that garbage to direct flow. Are there opportunities, depending on what neighborhoods we're in, to open up those channels, to restore floodways, to restore part areas, although, like the Rouge, I'm trying. It's going to periodically flood, but most of the time it's a great place hanging out, right? So where are those opportunities? Where can we start looking for those? And again, because it is so complicated, I mean, somebody like the board and their resources, they're not an expertise. So that's.
In terms of the federal funding, is it the 2024 federal budget that holding up or something? So
That is, this is the line item in the quarter's budget. They have to be appropriated.
Okay.
For this.
for 2024.
For, yes, this.
Okay.
I get confused with this.
No, it's fine. With the that for delay and stuff, but no, I don't know experience.
Yeah. So it's in the current budget. All they're waiting for is the current budget to be approved at congressional and presidential level. And we're off to the races in terms of starting the study. But what I really wanted to get in front of you guys for today was I need to have a lot of meetings like this with stakeholders to start getting you guys oriented with what we're trying to achieve so that I can come back and when you have the questions of, what happened at Con and what are we going to do at my neighborhood, how is this going to help me? I have to really say, we need to look at the big picture and then have that discussion because there's going to be trade-offs, right? There's going to be things that help water quality, there's going to be things that help flood resiliency, and they might come at the cost, one might come at the cost of the other. So we need to communicate as a community and figure out what makes sense for Southeast Michigan.
So you might have a situation where you're asking a community in northern Macomb or northern Oakland to pull back their water, and it's going to require them to pay overtime, okay, to do that. And they're going to say, why should we pay overtime? We're just going to send this flow down to Detroit and they can worry about it. That is a problem that occurs more than you would think, correct?
Yes. Hundreds of those types of conversations that go on, we have to figure out a way to manage that and keep the ball moving forward in terms of what's best for the overall for the region. So.
I'm sort of be sure I understand that. What a little is in front of it.
Yep.
But we have.
Sure.
Oh, we are.
Yeah.
But then why wasn't Royal on there?
Yes.
On the list, but it was on the municipality.
Oh, because you're part of the Oakland County Water Resources Commission.
And they are.
So that's the primary, so the tier 1 and tier 2 fund.
I was trying very hard to see. I think we had a combined board.
And again, it all based on the era of when that part of town was built out in the later days. Everybody put out this stuff.
I have a question. So I see the partnership or the emailing with the technical Southeast Michigan profile of in reality, and that's hard enough to kind of bring that. But in reality, if you had your druthers, I mean, it'd actually be a larger profile because, or is that just artificially kind of where we have thank you for that question.
And then that's kind of the discussion I've been having before, where the boundaries of the study. And what we did was we said, forget about the village boundaries. We're going to use the hydrologic, the watershed boundaries, update for the but that basically was for watershed, I think, with St. Clair. Detroit is actually the very, and there's, so we're looking at it from a scientific hydrologic standpoint. And then we're gonna layer that against, the political boundaries and service areas and trying to have more technically founded discussion about that.
A real quick question. Okay. First of all, thank you, it's been very informative. So part of what we do, we talk to our neighbors about issues that, you know, we learn about here. Could you give us like 3 talking points that you'd like for us to bring back to our neighbors and share with?
Yeah, I'll say that for the last slide. I'll do that.
That's the thing.
I'm talking about the regions. Any overlap with Canada in this?
Canada, I mean, there's obviously Canada's a part of our issue, especially on the drinking water side, right? We even have one intake that effectively drinking waters, so. That is certainly a part of it, and it's also a part of the discussion for Lake Erie and the issues they're having there with eutrophication, so. Yeah, Canada's a part of it, but for the purposes of the wastewater and the flood resiliency, that's basically just a domestic issue, which is hard enough.
I have to do the rural.
What was the question?
The house is in Royal, built in 1943, is a combined system.
Everything around here is combined.
I mean, there are efforts to separate, right, in some areas that have gone through that, it's very, very expensive, and I'll talk a
When
little.
did they start doing that?
Sorry.
When did they start doing the separated? We don't think.
And again, you know, there were areas that were separated long before that. So I'm gonna steal a couple more, say a smaller geodesy slides here. These are projects just to kind of give you a flavor of what we do regional cooperation. What are some of the things that we've done already or that are in the way? So this was what they're calling the far west Detroit stormwater improvement project. The genesis of this was the Evergreen Farmington system, but when the Water Resources Commissioner had the need to build another one of these contention basins, you know, more great infrastructure, very expensive, very costly. But there was an area in Detroit that was served by the same interceptors that we could do some green infrastructure and accomplish the same environmental, these are equivalent environmental projects. All we had to do was figure out how to get the money from that Oakland County would have spent anyway, that was the city to fund this project. And it actually started before it existed, so we were part of that, pulling it together and making sure it happens so that we could, again, use the regional approach to do what's best for the region as opposed to kind of blindly following the rules the way, or the regulations the way they're written. And there's some other, you know, green space opportunities that are being done. There's a lot of Joe Louis Greenway. You know, the Riverwalk, there's a lot of activities in the city that are amenable to the green infrastructure and taking stormwater out of the system. Opportunities to build natural retention basins instead of concrete basins. So these are just some of the ideas that we hope to flesh out as part of the overall core study. So getting back to the 3 talking points. Climate change is real. We got to put having that debate. You know, we just water flows downhill. Some come up tomorrow, something, I don't know what's going on, but the Great Lakes water system crosses a bunch of political boundaries, and what's under our control, but we also rely on cooperation amongst all the entities. And then, you know, we really need to work together as a region to look for these win-win opportunities. So that would be my three talking points, and hopefully I advance the ball a little bit to hit on that. So, I want to run time.
I do have a question about the bipartisan infrastructure law. I would have thought that these water systems and flood resiliency and climate change resiliency would have been funded. Grants.
Yes, we are. And wherever we can identify a project that fits those criteria, we certainly don't we're trying to do that, but as we're moving to the fourth study, it's bigger than that. So we can do these things within the available grant money, so we don't, make a group that just chases grants.
Yeah.
Works with the city. I think I mentioned, we're doing a lot of work with MDOT, when we're doing I-94 and the Oregon Bridge and 375 to look for opportunities to get stormwater out of the system. And up there, water, stormwater, different regulations, the city first got to move. So we're looking for those opportunities to get stormwater out of the demand system wherever we can.
Yeah, I want to, Todd, if you don't mind, I'm going to add a fourth talking point, which is this whole concept of flood resiliency. So talking to your elected officials about that is so important because I was involved a little bit in this stuff for a while. And the regulators were forcing the utilities to not dump water into the Detroit River. By not dumping water into the Detroit River, where did it end up? Ends up in your basement, okay? So they finally, based on 14 and 21, got the message that there's a lot of people that don't like losing their basements and their homes to the sewage. So they've been redefining the permits in the process to allow the utilities to let some of the stormwater into the river, right? I mean, that's actually what's happening. And they're giving Todd, who's very, very superb program manager, to get the money through the Congress, the opportunity to create a plan for the entire region around flood resiliency, which is one of the reasons why I'm really glad he's here, because this thing takes off. It could be a major, major benefit to our region.
So I'm City Commissioner Amanda Herzog, and but my my background is also in environmental engineering, and I've worked on a program with Todd's a part of. It's called the Michigan Center for Freshwater Innovation. It's a collaboration between U of M, Wayne State, and Michigan State, and they're looking to get folks together and to find these innovative approaches to regional collaboration, which Todd's talked about. And we're all probably sitting here like, what can we do? And that is not only just talk to our elected officials, but vote for elected officials that are willing to come to the table and be collaborative and look for the innovation. And because we can't always spend our way out of things, we have to think very uniquely about these problems. In our county, we have Water Resource Commissioner Jim Nash, and professionally, I have seen him be that person at the table, and I believe he's also running in November. So we should think about that while we're out on the street. But other counties have issues with, they lean maybe more into the political side, or they don't have the capacity to take on all of the opportunities to collaborate. So I think that looking at the local level, all the way up to the federal, we have federal partners. I think we have federal partners here today who have helped identify these problems and found money for these problems. So we have historic funding for infrastructure and climate that can help us solve these huge problems, because like Todd said, our infrastructure is aging. There's climate change makes that problem a whole lot worse. We are a Great Lakes state. We should be innovators, not only for our region, but for the United States and for the world. I don't know, I got really soapbox right there. Vote in November.
Very simple question. What is a watershed?
What is a watershed? It's the area where, when rain falls on the ground, it's the area by which it is collected. So, I'm gonna give you a good example.
Continental
You
divide.
know how you usually talk about the continental divide. The continental divide kind of separates the Atlantic Ocean from the Pacific Ocean. That's a massive watershed. So it's when rain falls and heads to the Pacific Ocean versus when rain falls and hits the Atlantic Ocean. So all a watershed is a smaller version of that. And so it could be your local stream, every stream, water has to go somewhere, right? All the time. Pam's got that.
So you think of it as the area that captures the water that flows to a river. So you'll have bridges and other things along like that separate water. You'll have like a bridge that separates water from going this direction to this direction.
So is that where the sewage and the water?
Well, it starts out with both rivers and then that also is with our drainage system, our sewer system as well, because the rain that comes from your roof flows into the pipe from roof that goes then eventually down to wastewater treatment plant. But you also have rain.
Wastewater treatment plant, is that a watershed?
Well, the wastewater treatment plant is where the water goes to clean it up before it gets.
Where is that?
Oh, where's the wastewater treatment plant?
Is that it in Detroit?
Yeah.
That's the
So
water.
there's one.
No, so we have several, we have, so we have, as you said, we have so many watersheds.
We got four
Big watersheds, so it eventually converge to that. wastewater treatment plant.
It's a geographic area. It's just the name of a place.
So I don't get water.
Where the water flows.
On your yard, it's on, where is it gonna end up going? That's where the water.
Okay, so why don't we have one of them?
You do, I mean, every piece of dry land is a number of a watershed. If the water goes somewhere, it ends up in a river somewhere, so.
But we don't have a wastewater treatment plant in Royal Oak. And is that what you're asking?
Well, no, this, we talk about watersheds and, if we got more, then it seems like with the stormwater and the, our wastewater, seems like. Can we build another one or two, but that's all.
Watershed again, it's just like saying city boundary.
So it isn't a foot, it isn't a building.
No, it's not a natural.
Water has to run down.
You can bring your front yard, sidewalk.
Unfortunately, I don't have a map.
Okay.
And if you have-
Just imagine your roof line. Half it goes one way, half it goes the other.
Ask you a question. There's different size watersheds, right?
Correct.
Say we were looking at my backyard as a geographic area, and I have an area in the backyard from an old tree that is lower than the rest of the area. All the water would go down into that lower area after a big storm, and we would have a watershed of a very small thing. But if so that's just for my backyard. If you're talking about Oakland County, there would be different watersheds. There would be bigger geographic areas that are handling it. But essentially it's the same thing. So the pipes are geared towards a watershed. Watershed is just natural from the geography, right? The natural area that water would flow down. Big puddle. Big puddle. Now I get it.
Still have this individual.
So for the Connor pump station and the cruise pump station, we are actively improving those. There's a much longer discussion than those with that. So we are making those investments to improve their overall ability to pump water and reliability and things like that. Those are projects that are underway. We're on our way to doing that, but that's not going to solve the problem that we're talking about today in terms of flood resiliency as a region. But that's part of it, but it's not the whole part of it. We have the broader conversation of water quality versus flood resiliency.
If you can give a big round of applause. All right, I am so excited. We have such a great special guest. I'm going to have Congresswoman Stevens introduce our special guest.
Well, good morning, Royal Oak Area Democratic Club. It's nice to meet you all. To this very thoughtful Democratic club and the speakers you bring in, we are, that was phenomenal. And I wanted to let you all know, Michael Tash, you all know him now. He's helping to run this great organization along so many years. My office is working alongside Leewell Lockheed staff. In part because of that question that was asked around the infrastructure bill, and in part because I represent over 24 communities here in Oakland County, an exclusive Oakland County district, and our mayors, our township supervisors, they are asking about water. They are asking about this next stage of infrastructure. So I've gone out to Leewell, I have toured around, I've plugged in my municipal leaders to Leewell, and we, alongside Jim Nash, by the way, our great water commissioner here for Oakland County, are working together very, very closely. And it's just a real delight to see my friend Dave Woodward in the room here.
Yeah.
He's doing his washers, he's got his amazing. Thank you for your leadership of the Oakland County Commission, especially the time when we have allocated so many great resources through the Recovery or Rescue Act, and obviously the COVID relief dollars and the climate dollars and things like that. It's nice to see Charlie Cabell, who works alongside you on commission. Do we have any other commissioners here? Okay, I know we have Regina Weiss from the State House, passing all sorts of great bills. Regina, thank you for protecting. My gosh, to see our Royal Oak City Commissioners in the room, back from overseas. Brandon Polo, and it's an amazing election that we had here. Everyone's talking about the Democrats in Michigan, and Amanda and I were knocking doors in Royal Oak, and my big takeaway from every door we got to was your great election, Amanda, and thank you for doing all that work, was that people in Royal Oak care. They care deeply. They were really plugged in, sleeves rolled up, ready to talk to us about pensions, retirement. Climate is on people's minds. So Amanda, thank you for being a leader on the sustainability agenda. Thank you truly for what you've done for the city of Royal Oak, and alongside Brandon, you two are just amazing. So look, I always give you guys a big update from Washington. I don't know how many months in county we are going on in state of utter dysfunction in the House of Representatives. But thank you for being the buoy of the work that I get to do in the Congress. Look, the one thing in politics that we all always know is that change is increasing. Right? And you can't always predict. You can be working on things, and then a national or an international event happens. We have got to do the basics, folks. We have got to fund our government. We have got to provide guarantees to everyday Americans around the functionality of the next corporate hearing about the supplemental funding. Are we going to stand alongside democracy? Are we going to stand up to Putin, who I have been battling since day one in Congress? Michigan resident Paul Whelan, the longest wrongfully detained American in Russia, one of the longest. Mr. Whelan is over 5 years in a Russian labor camp, was working at Borg Warner, living in Novi, visiting Russia, and was falsely accused of espionage, falsely, total kangaroo court trial. That was the canary in the coal mine, folks, to the international lawlessness, and something that our guest here, who I am going to give a very luxurious introduction to because he's one of my heroes, has worked alongside me on in his chamber, is this hostage work, right? Wrongfully detained Americans. Folks, our adversaries are picking up on vulnerabilities for Americans abroad, right? So if you're Russia is a continued war inside Iran, continued war investigation. China has taken political prisoners, and we need to shine a light on what happens when these lawless countries attack us, because we're a beacon of democracy. And this is why I'm the co-chair of the bipartisan task force for American hostages and wrongfully detained Americans abroad. We have actually had some success in passing legislation. If you want to believe it, we've got a hostage case, we've got, which is going to be March 9th, we have a flag designated. We have passed an overwhelming resolution calling for the release of the hostages held in Gaza. Look, I know this is a peaceful group here. We need to see peace in the Middle East. We need to see a ceasefire be reached with the release of the hostages. We don't want to be in another forever war situation. I am reading everything alongside all of you and doing the best I can to govern successfully and certainly support our president, who, you know, has spent his career in these things. But speaking of our president, the great President Joe Biden, you know, I just feel like I'm in love with her right now. In the sense of, I am so proud of our president. He is just a man of heart. Michigan, he comes here every chance he gets. I say, Mr. President, you need me to get you out of Detroit. We'll get you access to every beautiful and it's being tested. He has accomplished so much, and it's great to talk about accomplishments, particularly what we've done with the cost of prescription drugs and lowering them, investing in manufacturing, standing up for our unions, brothers and sisters. You can see them on that picket line. Folks, he was just out there with people he cares about. And that's what it was like when we passed the infrastructure bill. You know, I go over there, we sign the, you know, the bill, and we're outside because it's still COVID era, and we, you know, it's a big event, and I had lost track of my members of Congress and ended up in the back, and then kind of sitting in the middle alongside an IDW member from Maryland. Row after row of rank and file union members who are benefiting from an infrastructure law that puts them first. So our president has shown us his commitment to delivery. He has shown us his commitment to promises made and then promises kept. That's all good. That's, you know, this is why I'm excited about this election. We get to talk about good stuff, but we also get to talk about what we still have left to do. 4 years isn't long enough. We have got to do voting rights. We've got to work on the racial justice agenda. We've got to pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Bill. We have got to modify Roe. We certainly have to stand up and protect IVF and what's going on in Alabama right now. It's on the agenda. Full funding for special education, which I know so many of you in this brilliant community as we're tied to our amazing public schools, and we want to see special education realized. Now, we're joined here today. This man doesn't even know this, like my people in the US Senate before I ever knew I'd run for Senate. That was before I ever run for Congress. Because I was working in a research lab, I was doing manufacturing industrial policy work. And every time I turned around, a guy named Chris Coons, Senator from Delaware, I was happy introducing bills to stand up for American manufacturing before we knew supply chains were going to be disrupted, before, you know, we couldn't just say make it in America and buy America, that we'd actually have to take the steps to invest and connect the dots and certainly put on some of our trade and foreign policy hats. But we also have someone joining us today who's a really dear friend of President Biden. I mean, he's President Biden's senator, and that's a new thing. And so continuing to work alongside hostage efforts, you know, what I was talking about was standing up to Putin, continuing to stand up for American manufacturing, and standing up for our president. Can you please all give me a warm welcome to Senator Chris Coons?
Thank you, Emily. Look, you guys already know this, but it's great to have it reinforced. You have an amazing congresswoman. She is gonna cruise to reelection with your support. Thank you for being a kind of nerd who is committed to good policy and works really hard. But is also a good politician and understands how to navigate and stay positive in the midst of an environment that's just so crushing at times. So it is a joy to work with you on the hostage and wrongfully detained Americans legislation. We got a bill to create a special day on March 9th, which is the anniversary of when an American named Levinson, his last name was Levinson, was picked up and ultimately killed by the Iranians. You've been tireless in your work with Paul. One of the things we're gonna work on together, two bills. I'm sorry, but it's a great. There's an American named Jason Rezaian, who's a reporter for the Washington Post. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He spent a year and a half in Iran. When he came back from jail in Iran, there was something waiting in his mailbox he didn't expect. A bill from the IRS. Fines and fees for his failure to file and pay taxes on it. So he called up and said, hey, I'm Jason Rezaian. Who are you? I'm from the Washington Post. I was in prison for the last 2 years. They said, nice to hear that. Can you forgive my fines and fees? Well, can you prove you were wrongfully detained? Look at the Washington. By statute, they cannot waive the fines and fees. So we have the, wait for the name of it, Stop Taxing American Hostages Act. You would think that would pass by unanimous consent, but in the wackiness of the current Congress, we struggle to get anything by unanimous consent. That is when I'm optimistic. Senator Mike Rounds from South Dakota is my Republican co-sponsor in the House. I am hopeful we can get that done. The next one we're going to be working on together, and the Congresswoman's going to be helping lead this in the House. If you're in prison for as long as someone like Evan Gerskovich, I think we're coming up on his second anniversary in a Russian prison. How long have Paul been in prison?
Oh, 5 years.
5 years. That means from his retirement time, he's missed 5 years of payments into Social Security. This is not a huge number of people, but the justice issues at stake in the countries around the world where Americans have been unjustly detained, where they are hostages, often being used by evil regimes for leverage against us. I think the least we could do is try and make sure that they get the payments into Social Security, the credit for what they would have done had they been able to still work. So that's going to be a great thing we're going to work on. Who's going to watch the State of the Union Thursday? Anybody? I'm looking forward to watching. Not everybody, but a lot of people are going to watch the State of the Union. What do you think you're going to see Thursday night from our president? A sharp contrast. As Haley just said, he's got a heck of a record to run. He's got record investment in he's got record investment in manufacturing, bringing advanced manufacturing back to the United States. He's signed into law bipartisan bills that deal with gun violence, that invest in community mental health, that provide support for our veterans. I mean, these are remarkable pieces of legislation. I gotta tell you, back when we were in the primary in 2019-20, and every senator seemed to be running for president, we had like, was it 7 senators running for president? Quite a few of them said to me, he's so quaint, he's so cute. He thinks bipartisanship is still possible. He's got a list as long as your arm of landmark bipartisan bills that he has signed into law. And in critical areas like combating climate change, where we could not get Republicans to work with us, through the Inflation Reduction Act, we were able to move Democrat-only bills. When Trump had a chance to move one bill with only Republicans, he did a massive tax cut for the wealthiest Americans and the most profitable companies. When Biden had a chance to do one Democrat bill, he cut prescription drug prices and he combated climate change with the biggest investment in new systems and policies we've seen in the generation. So I think you're going to see a sharp contrast. Trump is bragging about the Dobbs decision. And the logical consequence of it, we saw on the floor of the Senate this week. Senator Tammy Duckworth, a combat veteran who could only have children through IVF, went to the floor with a bill I co-sponsored to say, let's just make it clear, IVF, it's not going to be criminalized. And Republican senators blocked it. We spent months negotiating a bill to secure our border, to invest $20 billion in combating fentanyl, in hiring more border patrol, in deportation flights. This was the price
of getting the needed security investment for Ukraine. And after months of negotiations, we were a day away from passing it. Trump woke up, decided, nah, I'd rather have an issue in the campaign. And you saw the competing border press conferences this week. Biden even said, President Trump, work with me. Let's solve the problem. Trump wants chaos and he wants an election issue. Biden wants to secure the border and solve a problem. And last, in terms of leading our place in the world, I just came back from Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, and Oman. It was an interesting week. And Cory Booker is in Jordan right now, was texting me while I was outside. We've got a lot going on in the world. Our NATO allies, I was at the Munich Security Conference and met with a dozen heads of state or defense ministers or foreign ministers from throughout Europe. They are terrified of what will happen if President Trump is reelected. Don't take my word for it. Read what his own national security advisor, defense secretary, and chief of staff have said about his unfitness for office. And in case you're wondering, Trump himself, lying, bragged that he had threatened a European head of state NATO partner. You don't pay up, I throw you to the Russians. Is NATO a protection racket?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Trump misunderstands the history, the contours, the context, and our values. Biden stands for and understands where we are in history. So let me conclude my remarks and just say, I was a county executive for 6 years in Newcastle County. I was responsible for a 15-branch countywide library system. My stepmother's an MLS librarian. I love libraries. So frankly, thank you for giving me the privilege of the podium for a few minutes to talk about my dear friend, Joe Biden. You know this, but it helps for you to tell undecided friends this. He is grounded in his family and his faith. He understands in his gut what it means to stand up and fight for folks who are overlooked, who have gotten down on their luck and who need a chance in life. He believes in hard work and opportunity, and his most treasured possession is the '67 Corvette Stingray. That probably tells you everything you need to know. The nuns who educated him and the family that raised him gave him good, solid middle-class American values. And he's got 50 years of experience on the world stage. He knows every head of state I've met with in the last month, in fact, in my 13 years. I'd rather have 81 years under my belt than 91 charges facing me. I'm told I have permission from the tower to take 10 minutes of questions in case anybody's got a question. Somebody in this erudite and thoughtful group has a penetrating question, I will fill in.
I'm a member of the Ukrainian American community here in South Africa. And one of the pieces of generational trauma that's passed down to me is that, you know, my parents and my parents or grandparents left Ukraine if they saw the writing on the wall and left. I would have to say that at this moment in time, I'm feeling the same about the United States. We're at this serious point. You made a very solid case for Joe Biden, and you didn't have to make it to me, but why isn't the threat to democracy enough anymore?
Great question.
Yeah.
Great question. So I'm a student of history, and I often, as a young man, I read a lot of books about the Second World War, and particularly the run-up to the Second World War, and I felt like yelling at the relevant legislators, you know, don't you see this coming? It's a freight train. I'll remind you, there was a nationwide movement in the United States whose slogan was America First. 36, 37, 38, 39, 40.
Yeah.
Made it hard for FDR to get us into supporting the United Kingdom. In fact, the Brits were on their knees on the verge of defeat, and FDR was doing the basis for a destroyers deal and the Lend-Lease deal, working around the margins of what was legal to keep Britain from collapsing under the weight of Nazi aggression. It's so obvious looking back at it that had we been engaged earlier, we could have prevented the deaths of millions. Bluntly, when I've asked President Biden directly, why are you so strongly pro-Israel? Why does this speak to you? It's because as a child, his father talked to him about the SS St. Louis and the refugees from Germany who went up and down the coast and were denied sanctuary in the United States and were forced back to the Nazis. And the knowledge that we had the chance to bomb the railway lines into Auschwitz and did. Our history is an incredibly poignant and painful teacher. Why are we missing at this moment? One last story. In the run-up to the 22 midterm, I actually went and sat down with the president. I said, Mr. President, I love how much you love democracy. I love how much you believe that the average American is really watching this show. But I'm not seeing it in the polls, and I'm really scared. I think this red wave is gonna just crush us. And bluntly, you need to start talking about kitchen table issues. You need to start talking about how are we gonna get gas prices down and prescription drugs and energy, and he said, you're wrong. He kept delivering the message about defending our, everybody remember this?
Yeah.
In 5 states where there were election deniers running for Secretary of State or governor, every one of them lost. Small margin, but every one of them lost. And no offense, but in states that had a serious flirtation with extremism, like Michigan, one of the guys who tried to kidnap and assassinate your governor was from Delaware and lives about 5 miles from me. When he gets released, I'm really excited about that. You've got folks here who were training as militias and intending to use political violence to change and shift the trajectory. Our president was convinced that the average American was watching this, and that in states like Michigan, like Ohio, like Arizona, like Pennsylvania, where democracy very nearly faltered, and where January 6th, which is a memorable experience for those of us who were physically in the Capitol. There's those saying that didn't really happen. They were just tourists, not a big deal, nothing to look at. And there were those who were saying, this is a terrifying, critical step in the drop away from democracy. In 22, the American people showed up and they voted and they chose candidates who will insist on free and fair elections. It is shocking to me that a former president who's been indicted over and over for criminal conduct, ranging from the unseemly, like paying off a porn star, to actually interfering in our elections and trying to overthrow our constitutional order, that he is likely, in fact, at this point, certainly the next candidate of the Republican Party. I find that hard to believe. This suggests an investment in civics and in teaching history would be a good idea for a long-term future. But in the short term, it's why we need you. It's why we need folks who are willing to go out there and be a part of Team Biden. So that Joe Biden isn't just standing there on a stage behind a podium giving a lecture to people. You're out there saying, I'm Ukrainian American. My family knows what the Holodomor was. My family sees who Putin is. We know what's happening in Ukraine. And how is it possible that former President Trump thinks it's okay to abandon them in the face of this aggression and violence? The Ukrainians aren't asking for a single American to fight. They just want bullets to kill Russians and retake their own territory. There is no future for Europe, peaceful, unified, and free, if Russia wins.
Yeah.
And President Zelensky told me in person, in a meeting in Munich just 3 weeks ago now, they will lose without our support. President Biden has helped pull together 50 other countries who in combination have invested more in Ukraine's defense than we have. We have partners and allies. We are sharing the burden of this. But how you could not see this clearly requires willful blindness to history and willful ignorance about the almost certain consequences. I met with the Prime Minister of Estonia. She is fierce and brave. And her comment to us was, if Putin crushes Ukraine, the Baltic states are next.
Oh, yeah.
And at that point, whether or not NATO means a thing is going to be on the line. And we know how Trump feels about it. He thinks it's a protection racket. In person, I said to President Trump when he was trying to pull American troops out of Germany, why are you doing this? He said, no, they're not paying enough for it. I said, our troops aren't Hessians. He said, what's a Hessian?
Oh, boy.
I said, Mr. President, they were the mercenaries used by the British in our own Revolutionary War. I don't get your point. Our troops are not there as rent-a-cops. They are there as part of collective security. This isn't a dues-paying organization where someone walks around with an envelope and says, pay up. as he imagines it.
Yeah.
And so bluntly, thank you for the question, and I'm sorry for a very long answer. We are at a pivot point in history, and those who read and those who engage are critical to our success. So I know I'm literally preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
Get out there and tell your friends and neighbors and families. Look, we've all got complex social circles. At Thanksgiving, I've got some big Trumpers sitting around the table. No. Yeah. I love my family, but I mean, we've got everything. It's important that we engage, and we engage with historical rooting and with a values frame. Please.
I'm still confused about why we are sending money to Israel. They know that's around people,
Okay.
and why they're not stopping them.
That's the more important question. I can give you a long answer, a short answer. This week, what was in direct conflict was we have for a long time been the single biggest donor to Palestinian housing, education, and healthcare. The organization called UNRWA that provides all support to Palestinians in 5 countries. The United States is far and away the biggest donor. And we are far and away the biggest donor to Israel. We are providing military assistance to our ally Israel in a fight against Hamas, a terrorist organization that massacred 1,200 innocent civilians. And we are trying to provide humanitarian assistance into Gaza. I said to Prime Minister Netanyahu, if you don't change direction, if you keep going after Hamas through civilians and make no meaningful provision for the protection of civilians in Rafah, where there's over 1 million civilians, I'm willing to condition aid to Israel. Something I've never said. Our president works on this every single day. He's just announced we are going to airdrop alongside the Jordanians and the French humanitarian aid into Gaza, which is just a measure of his determination to do this. Let me finish my answer before you interrupt me again, please. Okay? Because I'm not going to have an argument with you, but I'm going to try and give you answers if I can. Part of what's going on here is that Netanyahu's government depends on 2 guys, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, who are so far right, the American equivalents would be the Proud Boys or the Klan. They have been preventing humanitarian assistance from getting into Gaza. Cindy McCain's the head of the World Food Program. They've been trying to land a shipload of flour in Ashdod for weeks and weeks. Smotrich was blocking it. I had to meet with President Herzog to get him to force Netanyahu to agree to allow flour. Flour cannot be diverted to Hamas in a way that puts Israel at risk. This is a huge moral conundrum. I agree with you. Why are we still providing support to Israel? They're a vital ally in the middle of a war. At what point are we going to see a change in policy? President Biden, I don't speak for him, but I am giving you my insight, believes that if we simply cut off all support for Israel, they will move even farther to the right and take even more aggressive actions. And that staying at the table with them and pushing them to do a hostage release or a humanitarian pause for 5 weeks is the best use of our engagement and relationship at this point, and I agree with you. And I have 5 other people with questions, and I know I didn't give you the answer you want. Sir, thank you, ma'am.
To a sort of average man on the street, it sort of looks like Trump and Mike Johnson like take orders from Putin or direction or some sort of, yeah, is that even possible that that's happening at the highest level of our government?
Is that even possible?
Yes.
I mean, I'm amazed I
You all are
have.
giving your own answers. I'll tell you that it was pretty striking that the principal source for the House Republican impeachment inquiry has been charged by a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney with acting as a Russian agent and with intentionally spreading disinformation. I think I'm correct on that point. I mean, it was like every week in Congress, there's another, what? All I know is that President Trump, with whom I spent a lot of time, I cracked 3 molars in the 4 years that man was president. But he just loves authoritarians. He really likes strongmen, and he admires people who can, I don't know, jail their opponents. Which ought to be scary enough. Is he taking orders from Putin? I actually think he just like wants Putin to like him so much. Anyway,
Okay,
I shouldn't get into anything more detail. Sir.
Good morning. Tom Regan's my name. I'm a longtime Democratic Party activist. I ran this club for years and years. Every elected official in here I canvassed for and donated to. But I wanted to warn you, I find our position in Gaza completely deflating. The fact that we're financing and equipping this slaughter, that Israel has cut off food and water, and these people are literally dying of starvation and dehydration. And we need to do something about it immediately, or we're gonna pay in November.
I understand. Tom, I respect your position, and there's a lot of us in the Senate Democratic Caucus who are genuinely struggling with this. I've been a strong supporter of Israel my entire time as elected official, 23 years. This was my third trip back since October 7th. This week, I've literally met with family members of American hostages being held by Hamas, and representatives of the Palestinian community in my home state. I'm Christian, and there's a lot of Palestinian and Christian connections in my denomination and my home church. This is a very painful issue for us, and I don't know what you'll hear on this in the State of the Union, but I know the president is bearing down as hard as he possibly can to try and get a ceasefire and pivot to regional peace. And what happens if that doesn't happen is going to be I think this will make this. Thank you. Anybody got one more question? Your congressman would like.
Well,
I guess you get to ask all the questions you want.
since you're in the upper chamber, and we had some other earth-shattering news this week about Mr. McConnell, retiring from leadership, I was just wondering, because we do care so much about who is, in those four corner meetings, and we're striking deals and trying to keep the government open. What do you think's gonna happen on the Republican side for who they replace in county?
So I'm supposed to be, energizing and uplifting. And no disrespect to our sister body. But as newer senators have come over from the House, whose grounding is in the full body contact, 24/7 combat style of the Freedom Caucus. In my now 14 years, the number of Republicans I've been able to legislate with and work with has steadily gone down. Just take a look at Tennessee. Bob Corker and Lamar Alexander were great friends and partners. We did a lot of legislating together.
Bob Corker worked on the auto rescue folks. We spent a lot of time with him on this.
When he was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, he and I got 5 bills from idea to introduction to President Obama's desk in 1 year. I'm not doing anything like that now. Look, the betting money is that it's one of the 3 Johns and probably John Thune, but there's John Thune, John Cornyn, and John Barrasso. I know all 3 very well. I have 7 bills with John Cornyn. I have none with Barrasso. In fact, one of the bills I had with Cornyn was about civics education. I think if it were John Cornyn, look, he is a fierce partisan. He is a conservative Republican from Texas. But he led a bipartisan delegation. We went to the border, we went to Mexico City. That included James Langford and Chris Murphy and me. That's his instinct. I don't know that we would see, my concern is that there's at least 15 in that caucus who are blow it up, burn it down, Freedom Caucus guys, and in order to get their votes, one of these 3 is probably gonna cut a deal that will result in, look, if we end up in a place where President Biden is reelected and we take the House.
Yay! Get it done.
President will not be, we will almost certainly not confirm judges, not confirm ambassadors, and not confirm senior leaders for the administration, which would completely hamstring the administration.
Right.
So there's one answer, reelect our president, take the House, and help us hold the majority in the Senate.
While they're taking the picture, if you want to be a precinct delegate, you can come back here and fill out the form and I will notarize it for you.
Excuse me.
Perfect. All right, here, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
And if you've already filled out this form, pass it over here to William and he will turn it in for you. Thank you, William.
Amanda, I'm Kelly Jones with Rep McDonald's office. Don't thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much. Yeah, we have to sing it together for sure. And I'm the chair of the Detroit Devils too. We have some work that we're doing with commission. Oh, yeah. That's Tony's dealer. If you want me to connect with him, you can put that out there. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much.
Louder.
Quiet. I'm working on the use in that area. And I have a few things to report. One is, mine is a precinct delegate. Yes. And from what I gather, we have a lot of copies. And students, so really hard act to follow. Got your attention. Anyway, yeah, so it's really important in November for us to get our representatives. Well, I encourage everybody who doesn't visit California, come on, you can do it today. Have a bunch of form affidavits. I want to be allowed by people, get Tom Regan in the back to notarize this for you. And I would actually thank you. Thank you for your seriously. There's an organization called Democratic Precinct Delegates of Oakland County. They have training, there's a training session on March 12th. To give you some basics on what we do with it. And they also have a Facebook and Instagram advertising campaign. I was very skeptical of, but it turns out these 12 people that click on the ad, Instagram, Facebook, and indicate they're interested in it. Like, welcome to sign forms. Maybe some today. So they have 12 people putting on the ad and 5 people from the club actually ask what we're getting. And hopefully we'll get a lot more. We have 18 precincts, each precinct has 6 and 12. These are road allocations. We have a lot to fill and a lot of neighborhoods to reach out to sustain a democratic authority. So, yeah. Please, grab an application.
Next up, candidate reports. Candidates for election and then we speak. Thank you.
Yeah, some of the people here I don't know that I know in Ciechorski. I am serving in the 4th year as a 4-year term on the municipal board. We are all elected to 4-year terms, and mine is 7th in the year. One of the things that we've done since I've been elected, and you know, we could the impression last month, but we have successfully navigated a pandemic. My very great story. My very first meeting on the Oakland School Board, we were tasked with sending children and staff back into the buildings. It was January of 2021. We just introduced the vaccines to staff. My thought was we need to have staff vaccinated before we can put children and staff back into the buildings face to face or 6 feet apart from each other. We were successful in the amendment to the motion, and our staff was able to become fully vaccinated if they chose before the one madness is always.
No one's sitting here. Very quiet. But we have a responsibility to our staff and to our students. Support. And I have positions. If you did not sign these last month, I appreciate if you did. And I look forward to serving another term from November. And it's Tim Ciechorski. School board member.
Oh, once again, fantastic. So I was able to.
My name is Judge Andrew Kowalkowski. I was appointed last week in March to the bench in April 2023 by Governor Whitmer to fill the vacancy that was left by Judge Wittenberg after the passed. So I've been in the role for going on a year now, which sounds crazy to say out loud. Out of some of the programs that I think we're a part of and expanded at the 44th Airport. Chief among them, I've talked about this a lot on the group already, the Operation Drive program. Well, back there joined us a couple of sessions ago and just all rolling on expanding that across Oakland County, which is super exciting. Because it's such a great program. And some updates on that. So I talked a lot about House Bill 5103, which is going to eliminate a huge blockade to about 30% of our participants being able to just apply for a license, start that process off. Passed the House in November of last year. Just 2 weeks ago, myself and Jeff Clancy went out to the Senate Transportation Committee. He testified in front of them that bill passed last Tuesday. Through the committee, bipartisan support, and we'll vote against it. It'll hit the Senate floor here hopefully soon. And then honestly, governor's desk to be signed and eliminate that barrier for our participants. Third of our participants are just sitting there waiting for either their deadline to get 3 years past that last moving violation, or for this bill to pass, so we can just get them in so we train off into the bills. So super excited about that. Last Tuesday, also we had a special guest at our Justice 401 programs. The Supreme Court, the Michigan Supreme Court Chief Justice, actually joined us in person and sat in and listened to that presentation, and then came to court the following day virtually to watch the violation probation discussion. So that was special. I've been elected as treasurer of the Oakland County District Court Judges Association. This is following Judge Meinke's last term as president of that association, so it keeps 44th District Court in a position of leadership across Oakland County. I'm really excited about what we're doing there. I'm going to be on the ballot in 2024, running for retaining the seat, so keep me in mind.
Hey, I'm Erika Alexander. I'm in the 4th year of my term on the railroad school board. I am also seeking re-election. I also met there out of my position. I've been really proud of the work that we've been able to do serving alongside Tim. One of the things that he didn't highlight that I think is one of the greatest accomplishments that we've had as a board is that we now have student representatives that serve on our board, and they, some of them are assigned and they participate in our finance and facilities role, and some of them are assigned and participate in our actual live board meetings, which are broadcast. And it's such an amazing opportunity to have student voice, and we've been expanding student voice into our diversity, equity, and inclusion and social justice commission. We now have several students that are serving on that board as well, and continuing to focus on improving communication and improving our opportunities for stakeholder feedback. So I would appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Hello, my name is James Huddleston, and I am here on behalf of my lovely, sweet, dear wife, the attorney Nicole Huddleston, who's currently at the Pontiac Film Club. They had a catering forum today. And so I am here on, speaking for Nicole, she is running for Oakland County Circuit Court Judge. Just a brief moment about Nicole. She has been appointed to 2 different boards. She's been appointed to the State Justice for All Commission and the Diversity Inclusion for All Commission as well. Nicole is the managing legal director at the Detroit Justice Center, and they provide legal services to folks who are underrepresented. Additionally, they have partnerships throughout the area for folks who are incarcerated coming back into population so that they can ensure that they have representation and a smooth transition. I just ask for you to think about Nicole because she's been steeped in community service, steeped as a public servant, even in Lakeshore Legal Aid over in Macomb County, as well as the Detroit, the Legal Aid and Defender's Office in Detroit. So this is just the work she does, the work she knows. She's going to be just with compassion. If you have not signed her petition, please, if you have signed a petition for someone else, that is totally fine. We got over 1 million votes here in Oakland County, but we just love to have your support. If you have not supported, then thank you so much. You should run for office.
Yeah.
All right, next up, elected official reports. Who wants to start off? I'm gonna say line.
Can I start?
Yeah, absolutely.
They're already doing it.
You're wasting everybody.
All right, good afternoon, Railroad. So that was an awesome meeting. It was really cool to be able to hear the special guests. I was actually going to run over to the Plumbers Hall after this because they're opening it up. But I'm like, we already got the speech here, the sneak peek, so I don't have to go over there, which is awesome. I just wanted to give a quick update on what's going on in Lansing. So as you all know, we are currently at a 54-54 split in the state house. While we are waiting on special elections to happen. So we have 2 candidates, Democratic candidates, running in the special election in Warren and Mysong, and in Westland and Peter-Hersberg. And so those are slated to happen at the end of April 30th. And hopefully after that, we'll be back up at full strength and be able to continue a lot of momentum. In the meantime, we've been doing getting a few things across the finish line, but we were off to a bumpy start. Republicans actually were voting down Republican bills, which was like super weird. Matt Hall, the minority leader, was under the delusion that there should be shared power, even though according to our own House rules, which they voted on and accepted, that's not how that works. We remain in the majority until, and unless we actually have a minority of seats, so once we lost another seat. And so things are starting to move a little bit now, but not a ton is happening. I also wanted to just touch on redistricting really quick. I know probably a lot of folks have been following that. Thank you if you have been, if you've given comment on some of the maps. The commission did vote on Wednesday to advance one map forward to the court, the Motown Sound map with some very minor tweaks. The court has a self-imposed deadline of, the end of March 29th, to report out that map, or to say either approve that map or to do their own map, through their special master. We are hopeful that the court will approve that map. The special master that would redraw the map is from Brigham Young University. Yeah, and, has a history of drawing heavily Republican maps. So we are very hopeful that the court will just approve what the commission has set forward, and that will get, the alternative would, likely be very bad. Under that map, the partisan fairness is a little bit worse than what we currently have, and so the district where Mai is running, that District 13, my song seat in Warren is gonna become a little bit more marginal. So just to know that it'll probably be we'll have another competitive seat as a result of these maps, but that was like the best case scenario, what was come up with. So, also, if that map is approved, my district will change quite a bit, so I will unfortunately no longer represent Railroad. Yeah, and, Greg, I don't know if Greg is still here from Rep Scott's office, but, Rep Scott will also no longer represent Railroad. I believe it would mostly be within Rep Price's district and Rep McDonald's district, the new configuration. My district would become, almost all of Oak Park minus that one precinct that's still running with Southfield, Rail Township in Detroit. And then Representative Scott's district would become, Ferndale, Pleasant Ridge in Detroit. So some changes there, if again, that happens. Yeah.
Somebody's came here and talked about how that all the redistricting was done fairly by citizen commission and changed things, so that it matched how the actual voting patterns were. How come this thing changed it so soon?
So there was a lawsuit that was brought, by the plaintiffs in Detroit alleging that, there was a violation of the Voting Rights Act. And the court upheld that, saying that the violation was that the commission talked about race too much on the front end when they were drawing those Detroit districts. And so that was the basis of the lawsuit. There were originally 7 districts that were identified that needed to be redrawn. Ultimately, I realized it wasn't working. Sorry. Ultimately, the commission decided that they withdrew those 7 districts, and they also withdrew a lot of the surrounding districts. So most of Metro Detroit, or most of the Detroit districts and just the districts touching Detroit were redrawn, in that Motown Sound map. Yeah. The only other thing I'll say really quick is that, the only other thing that I'll say is that, we are working really hard on the budget right now, so that is still happening. Thank you. That is still happening despite everything else that's going on in Lansing. And so, I personally am working hard on getting the school budget done. And I was really excited to hear, Representative Stevens talk about the need for more federal funding for special education, because that's something that we've really been advocating for, and that's something she championed. And so we did fully fund the special education allowance, foundation allowance for the first time in Michigan last year. But we still have more work to do to make sure we're fully funding all parts of special education in Michigan, and as well as every other thing that we do to make sure that we have full, equitable, and adequate funding for our students. So we're working on that right now, and if anyone has any other questions, I'll answer it. All right.
Next official one. Commissioner Motto?
Okay, Junior Commissioner Paulos right now. Okay, so I'll kick it off in the city commission. A lot going on, but not a lot of same, right? So in this last couple of weeks, we've been really busy. We started talking about the budget. So before that, like, we were able to start looking at stuff we've already done. This last meeting, we just approved almost $1 million in improvements to Lockton Park. And this continues a trend in the city. We reinvested within parks again. I love Jamel's and the news mayor. They actually stopped looking at the parks
They ran out of money. We're in a much better position, thanks in part largely to the taxpayers, right? Like we passed the village last year, and we're using this money to reinvest in parks. So right now, we're building an ninja park at Lockland. I know Henry and his other little friends may enjoy. We've invested in Dickinson Park. That's coming this year. We're building some new tennis courts and fixing the playground. We've been through these really great plans. We know what's needed in different parts of the state. We have over 50 parks. So there's a lot of work to do to make sure that we upgrade them all. So just a big thank you to the taxpayers for making sure that this is happening. So then after that, we started looking at that. The three of us, I believe, Commissioner, we should go up to MML. That's great. A lot of us are going up to MML at the end of this week, or next week, to meet with other local municipal leaders, to meet with state reps. And, you know, it's part of the continuing education about being a commissioner, right? Like, we're always out there trying to see what's working in other parts of the state and then bringing it back home. So that's really important. And then finally, like, I just want to touch again, we heard a lot of great things today, right, about democracy and advancing elections. I talked about this last month, I'll talk about it again. Democracy is definitely under attack here in Royal Oak. We had this recount that just went on that is being challenged and challenged again. Luckily, a lawsuit was dropped against the city. That's completely frivolous, but claimed your vote didn't count. Their election equipment since 2006 has been faulty. These are just Republican tactics that we're seeing come through, trying to prey on Royal Oak early on now as a test for the presidential election. So I remember last Tuesday, it was a beautiful day. Commissioner Herzog and I took our kids to the zoo together, walked around, came home and said, you know what, I don't need to vote in the primary election. It's, you know, we know who the winner's gonna be. And it's not to remind myself, that is not the case. We always have to get out and vote, all right? Every election is important. Everything that's going on, there's always looking on the ballot, and you have to go out and vote. So we have to make sure that we have the energy going up into November to make sure that we're getting out there and we're voting and we're telling all our friends and neighbors. So let's celebrate what's going on well in the city, and let's look to continue this way. So we'll pass it on.
Unlike Commissioner Colo, I don't wait till the last day to go. I voted January 29th, the first day my AV came to me, and I turned it in right away because I did not have anxiety. So like Commissioner Colo said, we're talking about starting the budget process. And I just want to tie that back to the legal conversation. We're talking about resilience, and we're talking about how we can protect our city, not only with infrastructure, but programs and all that. So stay tuned over the next couple of months as we flesh that out. The other thing is we have a new pilot program in Royal Oak with food composting at the farmers market. Food composting is really important because we're keeping methane emissions out of landfills. This is a pilot, we go for 3 months. Bring your food scraps to the farmers market. We'll see how that goes, and hopefully we'll have community-wide composting here in Royal Oak. And then finally, the last green thing I want to talk about is happening on March 16th in Royal Oak. The Royal Oak St. Patrick's Day Parade. It's so much fun. Dress all in green. Come out and be part of it.
Yeah, Michigan Municipal League Committee meeting yesterday, I learned about an effort being initiated by people on the west side of the state called Act the Tax. They are seeking, going to circulate petitions for a constitutional amendment that would eliminate all real and property tax in Michigan. Think about that. The schools would close. The city would close. This is speaking of assaults on our democracy, this is a huge one. And so I'm asking you right now, this is all kind of under the radar right now. We're still working on messaging, but I'm asking you all to be our eyes and ears. As one of the committee members had seen a TV ad for Axe the Tax. So if you see anything like on TV, or if you hear anything, or your neighbors, or if somebody asks you to sign a petition, please let me know. I am charlottedouglas@gmail.com. It's as easy as that. Because we need to monitor the orders and squelch this before it ever gets to the ballot. Oh, and sorry, and your agenda talks about, we're gonna hold the United States Senate, Alyssa Slackton has to get elected. So your ballot, you folks are going to about a campaign rally that's going on tomorrow. You have to sign up in advance. So please do it and come out and support the excellent candidates for the US Senate.
Basic questions.
All right, we have room till noon, so we still need to do this.
So Mary, I'll talk.
You guys, we gotta do around. So you can have personally between two.
All right.
You get to start.
Oh, okay, there you go. This is gonna let me talk for about 15 more minutes. Okay, so, generally, and this would be exciting because I haven't said this a lot to Dave, and Dave Kirchner is, so this would be fun. So recently, just because we're all friends, you all know Kevin Harit? Yes, Gary Peters' guy. So Gary, Kevin told me when I was talking to him, because I've been working a lot on our policies for this year, what are we gonna do to keep and expand our majority in Oakland County? I was asking Kevin what he thinks about things, and he really made it simple for me in my mind of how to think about us Democrats, okay? Is that, are we going in the right direction? And so I think we all can agree when we say right direction, we all fairly are on the same page here, right? We all say the right direction for us is, and this is, I think, what we do in Oakland County, we just don't necessarily say right direction, we use more heavy language, but basically, right direction to us has meant building community, which that's why we put $20 million into Oakland County parks. It means building community when we put $8.5 million into our senior centers. It means smart safety when we put mental health social workers into a co-responder program that Royal Oak will specifically be benefiting from. So that you can right direction also means trying to make it easier for you to thrive here, right? So we've erased medical debt for we're working on raising medical debt for 80,000 families here in Oakland County. We did the Oakland Saves program, which is both energy efficiency and lowering your energy bills. So these are all like right direction things. So when we, what Chris Coons was saying about like all this big meta stuff about the Munich Security Conference and all that, I think when it boils it down, me and James are back for laughing at this, right? Would you rather have the 81-year-old or the one with 91 felony charges? Right? It's like, that's the right direction, right? I believe the right direction. Let's go for that type thing. Brandon mentioned a good point about the election. That's freaking crazy, you guys. The director of elections for Oakland County, Joe Roselle, was in the paper, and that's not supposed to happen for the director of elections. It's supposed to be a boring job.
To be threatened.
Yeah, to be threatened, like in a bad way. It's already starting. And just to frame that out, just so that we don't forget, Chris Coons from Delaware didn't fly here because he really wants to come to the Royal Oak Library on his day off. Michigan is super important. And then also within Michigan, Oakland County counts the most votes in the state of Michigan. So we gotta keep leaning in the right direction or it's all gonna fall apart, right? Democrats lost 2016 because Michigan had 10,000 more votes for Trump than for Hillary Clinton.
Jill Stein.
In 2020, Joe Biden won the White House because Michigan voted for Democrats and Joe Biden plus 150,000. So when we think about it and it gets down to the wire, it's gonna be us knocking on doors. It's gonna be all of us signing up to be precinct delegates. That's how we keep going in the right direction. Okay, remember 2014 as a Michigan Democrat? It sucked. Okay.
As Democrats in Oakland County, and Control is absolutely right, that we have to run the score up here. We have to make up where in turnout across the state will happen. We've got a great election office under the leadership of our county clerk, Lisa Brown. This last election, We had the most early vote participation in all of Michigan. We had 9,000 in one county of early vote. That's going to grow. It runs smoothly and easy. You can vote. I took my daughter out on Sunday to vote. It is the most amazing thing. And we're going to be able to use it as part of our strategy to run up the score. But everyone knows it. And the reason why the senator came here, why you're going to see the president and you're going to see the vice president and all the surrogates come through Oakland County, because we have to rise this, to rise the vote up here to offset any shortcomings we have around the state. And so building out the infrastructure, making it easy to vote, to make sure that guarantee that voting remains secure and safe all across Oakland County. Something that people don't often know, that Oakland County, we set up the system to actually count absentee ballots. Those ballots were all counted by 1 p.m. on election day and posted like within minutes of the polls closing. Also get areas around Michigan, around Oakland County, so we will not let Oakland County Democrats count ballots and everything. I mean, it's bipartisan counting process. I don't need to go into the details. Why that's so important? The red mirage effect. The longer it takes for our ballots to be counted, it suggests that something sinister is at play. And so our ability to drop and almost get counted upwards of 300,000 ballots in the first hour of closing helps offset that red mirage in Michigan because of the resources that we're putting forward. The last thing I'll just say as Democrats, that we are working on testing this out right now. We are working to lower the cost of living to make it easier for working families to get by. You heard about the things. I mean, Charlie was the lead on erasing medical debt. Not just for a few people, for 80,000 people. Millions of dollars in medical debt, pennies of the dollar wiped out to reset their pocket. Lowering energy costs permanently $500 to $700 a year so that it's easier for people to live. And there's another big proposal on the horizon, which I won't tease out yet. Very excited that Charlie and I are working on. We're going to be able to do things because the President of the United States signed the law, often without any help from any Republicans. Now to send the resources here to be able to set up the systems. I'll tease it out just a little bit, lowering student debt for students as they go on. So these are the types of things that make a difference. Charlie here, I talked to our popular member basis. We elect Democrats to go do something with that election authority, a majority authority to make people's lives better. And that's what we're doing. So thank you, everything. Kenny, good in here. Get another commitment, and the Royal Commissioners come stand, do your work, and stand with you shoulder to shoulder.
So of course, Erika and Tim already talked lots of jokes about things that are going on the school board. I just want to say that I am thankful for every day that I'm on this board, that we have such a thoughtful board, that we don't have some of the conflicts and shouting back and forth that you see in some areas, that we're all there to make sure that we have good quality public education for our students. So that's just my pen plug is, this next election, let's really make sure. A lot of times the down ballot races, people don't know who people are. They're not sure who to vote. It's not in the partisan part of the ballot. Please talk to people about keeping Tim Ciechorski and Erika Alexander on our school boards. And then I just wanted to make a little plug for the drum department. They are doing a play Freaky Friday. There's a evening performance at 7 p.m. and a matinee at 2 p.m. And then the middle school is also going to be doing. The middle school is also going to be doing a performance. Alexander was acting with the Axel Wonderland, and that's going to start March 8th with the 6:30 performance. March 9th has a matinee at 2:30 and the evening at 6:30, and March 10th has a matinee at 2:30. So go on out and see some great performances from our students.
Anybody else? All right, new business, a couple things I'm gonna go over real quick. So March bargaining is on the 21st, 7 p.m. This month is gonna be a motion gas, which is right on 4th Street, just past Troy. That's gonna be exciting. They have one room set aside for us. They don't have food there, but they vote for pizza for us, which we'll pay for ourselves. Very exciting. Last month we had great turnout, excellent turnout. 20 people were there, it was great. Join US Representative Mrs. Slotkin on Sunday, March 3rd from 12 to 1:30 in Southfield. He's running why she's running for US Senate and why the 2024 election is critical. The RCP, the QR code on the agenda. And if you haven't paid your dues yet, you can use the QR code here or the one online. You can find out how to pay it. Anybody else have any new business they want to talk about before we're done? We're done. Motion.
Motion.
Mine, second by. Thank you very much, guys.
My team's actually, I'm the chair.
Before I leave, does anybody need